Cory Booker of New Jersey, who I should note is running unopposed in tonight's primary for re-election, so you're not sweating the magic wall results as some other lawmakers are. When it comes to this fund, is what you heard from the Attorney General today, the acting Attorney General, enough?
No, it's not. How many times have they told us one thing and done another? We've seen this administration lie over and over and over again. Unless we pass legislation stopping this, I don't trust that the Trump administration might not pick this up and change their mind later down the road. And the thought not only of having this smash and graft sleaze fund, but also having a immunity to any past legitimate crimes that you committed for you or your family is something no American gets. And that too is ridiculous that he's still trying to defend that.
So you think that Congress needs to put an amendment on what you're voting on, what the Senate's going to be voting on this week, it looks like, saying that this fund can't go forward?
I think we are going to push that amendment as Democrats, force Republicans to vote on it, who know that this president does things that are corrupt and that they need to restrain him. Will they do that? I don't know, because this is the president who seems to get away with things because the Republican Party is refusing to check him or to prevent him from doing it.
Does it make sense on if the fund itself is not moving forward, which is part of the settlement, why the addendum barring anything being brought against the president for his past audits, basically, why that makes sense if that holds?
It's a simple principle we all agree on in America. No one is above the law. The president and his family seem to want special rules to apply to them. It makes no sense that this is included. That is unjust, and we need to stop it.
The acting attorney general obviously is commenting on this after a federal judge in Florida got involved here and is basically threatening to reopen all of this. Do you think the federal judge will end up killing this part of the agreement, this fund, and the part about the IRS not being able to look into what he did, the president or his business or his kids?
Yeah, this is a settlement that comes from Donald Trump being on both sides of this equation, controlling the government and being the party, the so-called aggrieved party. It's an unjust settlement, and it makes no sense, and the judge should stop it altogether by law.
The other news that we learned today is that the president is making the acting director of national intelligence, which is the official in the cabinet who oversees the 18 intelligence agencies in the nation, to Bill Pulte. And he may not be a household name for people, but he was right now basically running the president's housing and has been the person who's kind of been leading the charge against Tish James, Adam Schiff, all these other lawmakers who have faced scrutiny over their own, mortgages and home insurance. Do you believe that Bill Pulte is qualified for that job?
No, I mean, it is comical. He has no national security experience or intelligence experience whatsoever. The law, remember, this position came out of 9/11, where the law explicitly says that they shall have extensive national security experience. He has absolutely none. Those of us who know the failures in intelligence that allowed 9/11 to happen should not allow him to do that. It's against the law. He's not qualified. Donald Trump continues to put up non-serious people who are unqualified, and their only qualification is they serve to do his bidding to go after his perceived enemies. This is a man who has opened up investigations from his position against legislators or anyone he thinks are Donald Trump's enemies. And that, to me, is a crony. It's not somebody who will protect our country.
Do you believe that's why the president put him in this position?
Absolutely. It's the reason why Todd Blanche is in the position he is in right now, his former attorney. The serious positions that protect our nation are being filled of unqualified people whose only qualification is allegiance to Trump and willing to do his dirty work.
Well, Todd Blanche was an attorney, and he did get confirmed to the deputy attorney general role. I think for Bill Pulte, I mean, he's named to this also in an acting capacity, which means the Senate doesn't have a say-so on it right now.
I appreciate your distinction. It's an acting capacity. The Senate has advised and consent rules. And so will the Republicans in the Senate take somebody who has absolutely no national security experience in one of the most important public safety positions there are? Will they put someone who is clearly a crony of the president into that position? That, to me, even imagining that is unacceptable and delegitimizes their party and this president. This is a president that's not making us safe, and this is a glaring example of how dangerous this man is.
Some people might hear what you said about this and say, well, he's a Democrat, of course, he doesn't like the president's picks. I want you to listen to what your Republican colleagues had to say about Bill Pulte today.
be the kind of person you want leading the intelligence community?
I'll defer to the chairman on that.
We have 4 more weeks with Director Gabbard as the DNI, and I look forward to implementing last year's Intelligence Authorization Act with her to implement wide-ranging reforms that will shrink the DNI and take it back to its original intent to provide a mere coordinator or process role for the intelligence community.
And Pulte's
I have no observations on the matter.
What did you make of those answers?
I mean, this is what the Republican Party of today is. They are contorting themselves in some advanced form of yoga to bend over backwards to either do what the president says or not even tell the truth about the lack of qualifications of an individual. This is why that party who controls our House and Senate right now, which to me has surrendered the public trust and allowed this man to get away with things that no president conceivably could have gotten away with in years past. That party should be thrown out of power in these midterm elections in the House and the Senate.
And you're saying you don't trust Bill Pulte with the nation's secrets?
I think that you will find over the coming, first of all, it was laughable. There were people in the private conversations, none of us even believed this was true when we first heard the reporting. This is going to be severely...
Were any of those people Republicans?
Yes. This will be...
Republicans on the Hill were laughing about this decision?
Time and time again, I hear Republicans will say the quiet part in private, but not in public. On many of the unqualified positions, from Hegseth to Pulte, we do not have serious people running our military, running our intelligence, running the Department of Justice. And both parties know it, because we've seen qualified people from past presidents. This is ridiculous that we're even having a serious conversation about a man that comes from the housing background who has no experience in national intelligence being the key position that's supposed to be coordinating, gathering intelligence agencies to prevent terrorist attacks in our country. It is ridiculous.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio was also on Capitol Hill today. You had an exchange about the war in Iran.
Iran has no navy left. They've lost a substantial percentage of their defense industrial base. Iran has lost a substantial percentage of their missile launchers, and their economy is far worse today, and I mean far worse today, than it was 6 to 9 months ago. And they are looking at hundreds of billions of dollars of reconstruction costs just to get to where they were 6 months
ago. Mr. Rubio, you keep telling us how we're winning this war. The president keeps saying,
well, the war's over
completely
now.
Annihilated. The war is not over.
He says the war's over. You say it's not. Do you agree with him, though, that Iran is in a weaker position because of the war?
Their Navy is degraded, their Air Force is degraded, but as we see, as they continue to launch attacks on our regional allies and the United States, as they're holding the Strait of Hormuz right now, and clearly they overstated the amount of damage they did to missile launches and more. This is a stalemate that we're in right now. The most powerful country on the planet, the United States of America, is in a stalemate with Iran, who still has military capabilities. We have not won this war. This war is not over. We still have military personnel that are at risk. We're still spending billions of dollars a day in conducting these war operations. And the people that are paying for it, beyond the tragic loss of 14 soldiers and hundreds injured, is the American people every day at the pump. That I know Marco Rubio. I don't know what happened to him when he became Secretary of State. It's like he has Stockholm syndrome. That he's doing whatever his hostage keeper or the president of the United States is telling him to do and telling him to say. It is a complete lie what he said. This war is not over. We are actually doing something that is literally the definition of an act of war, which is an embargo of Iran. So again, non-serious people in important positions that are not telling the truth, all while the American people are paying the cost from it. This has got to end. And you started with saying the primary, my primary is over. I'm going to lead the ticket. We're going to take back the House, starting it in New Jersey. I'm going to be running around the country, and I hope people will go to CoryBooker.com and make contributions so I can fight this fight. The Republicans should not control the House and the Senate. We need checks and balances and oversight on this president.
Senator Cory Booker, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your time.